Do you enjoy riding bareback? The feeling of being one with the horse and your hair in the wind and the sweaty back underneath of you. So today I'm here with Andrea Wadey, and we had a comment come in on our video last week. We're here for you each week on Tuesdays to talk about a different topic: riding, training, horse care. And we had a comment come in if we could discuss bareback riding, because both of us have done quite a bit of bareback. I think we could say we both enjoy it. However, I very rarely recommend it, and for some specific reasons, for the health and comfort of the horse, and also just safety and practicality for the rider. So I'm going to kick this straight to you, Andrea. Do you ride bareback? And if so, how often?
I used to ride bareback an awful lot more than I do now, I'll be honest. Now I have a young horse, so a really well-fitting saddle is something that is very important to me. But I do love to ride bareback, and there is nothing quite like it to really assess where your balance is at. But I am incredibly aware of only doing it for very short periods of time. There's been a lot of science to back up the fact that if you're on the horse for too long bareback, it can create pressure points under your seat bones, and I'm very aware of that. But I do love it. There's nothing quite like cantering up the field bareback on a horse that you trust. You don't want to just jump on any horse and do it, but yeah, there's nothing quite like it. But you've got to weigh up the benefit and the how it feels for your horse.
Yeah, I agree completely. I do almost all bareback riding right now, but for two reasons. One is I live in a very rural area where I cannot get materials nearly as easily as when I lived in the States, meaning that I don't have a saddle currently that fits. The saddle that I was using with Canelo, he's changed, he's shifted, and it no longer fits well. So I mostly ride bareback for that reason. And also, I'm just doing some fun things in my own riding, practicing a little bit more. Some might call it freestyle, or kind of some tricks that I'm enjoying bareback, jumping on and off and doing some fun stuff. But there's the research that I've heard, and I think you found the article by Hillary Clayton, Dr. Clayton, that we're going to post here, is after only 20 minutes of of pressure. And when we ride bareback, what we have to remember is that our seat bones, even if you say I've got a lot of padding, you still got seat bones in there. Our seat bones are creating a pressure point on the horse's back, because the job of a well-fitting saddle is to spread that weight across that long back muscle. And when we don't have a saddle, we're putting all of our weight in our seat bones. And sometimes, depending on kind of the shape of the horse's back, we're putting weight directly on the spine as well.
Yeah.
And within 20 minutes of point pressure on muscle, there's actually tissue damage. There's inflammation that starts to occur.
Yeah.
So I too, I'm riding mostly bareback now, partly for fun, partly for the limitation that I don't have a good saddle. And because of that, I'm doing short rides. I'm not spending long times. I'm also doing a lot of on and off, where I'm on the ground, I'm running, I'm doing something, and then I'm back on for a short time. Because for the horse's comfort first, even with a bareback pad, hard pressure is always going to go through soft. So yes, a good bareback pad is going to help, but with time, that pressure, that point pressure of the seat bone, is still going to go through.
Absolutely. And there's been some further research as well, and I think this might have been part of Hillary Clayton's paper. If not, it was Missouri State University, but saying how foam panels in a saddle distribute the weight an awful lot better than traditional flocking material like wool. So if you are going to use a bareback pad, the more modern ones have a memory foam inserts in them, which allows you that lovely close feel to your horse, but distributes that all important pressure under your seat bones. Because the most balanced rider in the world, our seat bones are like stiletto heels. you know, when we were younger, any of us that wore stiletto heels, you stood on someone's foot, they knew about it. It's a huge concentration of pressure. Well, think about our entire size into sit bones. And yes, people can sit in a certain way, but if you're trying to relieve pressure off your sit bones, you're then moving also your center of gravity, and you're probably pushing your pelvis further forward, which has its own bone, which is going to create a pressure point. So you can just only do it for a very short amount of time. I do think that the benefits to it, in terms of when you do ride a lot and you really want to feel how balanced you are, just sitting on bareback for a minute or two safely, maybe someone's leading you, and feeling, wow, I can really tell that I am leaning hard to the left here or hard to the right. And it can help you in the long term make life more comfortable for your horse by being aware of how it is you're sitting, because the saddle can hide many things, especially if our feet are rammed into the stirrups. So going bareback definitely has its benefits for the horse going forward. But you can get some really great saddle pads. When we went across Costa Rica with the horses, we went coast to coast, and we got some sponsorship from a place called Freedom Riding Articles, FRA, and they do fantastic saddle pads that really distribute the weight for the horses. So, you can get stuff that you can still get that feel of bareback. But I also, another reason I think it can be fantastic, let's say you can sit nice and balanced and you feel safe, you can really feel when a horse is striding and putting their feet down, and get to feel the beat of the horse through your body rather than having that barrier of a saddle between you. And there's nothing quite like that. I just love it.
Yes, I agree too, that just the feeling of the horse's musculature, directly underneath of you is pretty cool. As a riding instructor, I do agree there's a lot of balance with, or a lot of benefit with sitting and feeling that balance. I don't recommend my students to do bareback riding
Mm.
until they're actually more experienced, ideally. Because if it's only for a few minutes, yes, but I feel that when we ride bareback, we have a greater responsibility, I'll say,
Yeah.
of how we position ourselves. Because part of the saddle is, this is a quote from Wendy Murdoch, is to marry the shape of the rider to the horse,
Mm.
meaning that the saddle has the long panels, which helps to distribute weight for the horse, and it has the seat for the rider. Because when we're sitting directly on a horse, especially a wider horse, our our um our knees are not going to be pointing straight forward like they would on a well-fitting saddle. Our knees are going to be pointing out, which means then our toes are pointed out, which actually then means that we've got less um, ability for good movement in our hip joints. It's
Yes.
also when we sit bareback, if we're not aware of our position, naturally you're going to roll more back onto kind of the back of your back part of the seat bones and kind of back on the pelvis. And that's going to kind of create this in a saddle, we would say you're riding in a chair seat, by
Yes.
leaning back with the legs out in front. So when I ride, especially when I'm doing more active work and I'm, doing lateral work and really working on the horse to be moving well, I'm really aware of holding myself a bit more than I would in a saddle, like holding my legs in position so that I am keeping more of the weight, that it's resting on my thighs, that I'm not just going totally relaxed and putting all that weight on the seat bones.
Yeah.
However, it takes that level of awareness of the body to be able to feel the difference between holding a posture and not bracing.
Yes.
And that's where I find a lot of new riders, if they don't yet have that feel, and I try to coach them into that, they just end up really tight trying to hold
Right.
it. And that's a very fine line that comes with, as we get more and more improvement in any movement skill, being able to hold a really good alignment, but without tension.
Yeah.
It's a bit of an oxymoron, but there's a feeling
Absolutely.
there.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to talking about saddles, a well-fitting saddle is something that is so incredibly vital. We had Letitia Glenn as one of the webinar presenters in the Wise Riders Club in a few months ago, and the research that they've done, she's from Contour Saddles, the research that they've done of this lifting of the horse's back in movement. If you are bareback, that can create a lot of brace. People will sit on a horse stationary in sitting bareback. And incidentally, that Michigan State paper written by Dr. Hillary Clayton, they put sensors under people's seat bones at a standstill. So they're not even moving. And the pressure that it created was phenomenal under those seat bones compared to sitting on a saddle that spread the panel. That was without movement. So now imagine this horse moving, and like Letitia Glenn says, this lifting of the back, that is only going to serve more to create tension in some riders who maybe are not able to really open their hips and move with their horse and hold their legs still without creating tension. You're looking at further back damage. So I think a well-fitted saddle. I know Dr. Letitia Glenn talks, she has the VersaFit to help people who maybe don't have a saddle that fits absolutely perfectly, because we all know it's a landmine trying to find a good saddle but that fits, and the VersaFit can help with that interface of creating a stable base and room for this horse to lift their back, which is vitally important. But if the saddle fits right, it's not going to tip the rider quite so much into losing their balance when they're moving. So I think by all means, have a go in a safe manner of sitting on a horse bareback to see how it feels. And if you're a really good and balanced rider and you're able to maintain a balanced posture on your horse without bracing, go for that canter down the beach, but just keep it really small. Keep it really small.
Yeah, another one last point to always consider too, when you are going to perhaps try bareback riding with a horse that you don't know well. Many horses are started with a saddle and they have never felt a rider on their back without a saddle.
Good point.
And that sensation can be quite new. So I've experienced this where I've had horses that were very accustomed to the saddle. They were, quite quiet under saddle. And going bareback was a new sensation that they just needed time to get used to that sensation, standing still, also in movement. So really pay attention to your horse and don't just assume because they're a quiet character when you've got the saddle on that they're going to be equally quiet. And sometimes too, if you've got a saddle that bothers your horse and you take that saddle off, you may have a much bigger moving horse and you need to be prepared for that too.
Absolutely. I remember a long time ago being told, and it's stuck with me forever, never make assumptions with horses. Never make assumptions. And I think that's some good advice. And we have a clip, we'll put it in the show notes, but I have a clip actually of my favorite ride in my whole life, over 50 years of riding. And it was a bareback ride. It was actually bridleless as well, but it's my favorite ride on a mare that was very dear to me called Coco. So that just came into my mind. So I thought we could post that in the show notes to let everyone have a look. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to try it, be careful. Don't make assumptions and don't outstay your welcome. Remember, your horse's back is something to be guarded at all costs. Never let them, in my work, in behavioral work, horses learn by association and they associate you with how they feel. So if you're making them feel uncomfortable, that is going to be associated to you. So make sure you are putting the comfort of your horse first and foremost.
Yes, well said. Thank you everyone for tuning in this week. We will be back next week. If you have any questions, topics that you would love for us to discuss, put them in the comments down below. Check out the resources that we've got here, both from this show and also resources from the work that Andrea and I do. and we'll see you back next week.
Bye, guys.